Here's the paradox. The men who tried the hardest in their marriages are often the ones who end up divorced. The men who sacrificed the most, who gave everything, who bent over backwards, they're the ones left confused and broken. Why? Because there are 5 fundamental truths about women that no one teaches men until it's too late. And today, I'm exposing every single one of them. Before we dive deep into this, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Not later, not at the end, right now. Because what I'm about to share goes against everything you've been told about relationships. This isn't popular advice. This isn't what society wants you to hear. But it's the truth that could save your marriage or save you from years of pain. And if this resonates with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because I break down real relationship psychology that actually works. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 5 truths hits you the hardest. I read every single one. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was the kind of husband every woman claims she wants. He worked 2 jobs to give his wife the life she dreamed of. He never missed an anniversary. He did the dishes without being asked. He listened to her complaints about her coworkers for hours. He was present, devoted, and completely committed. And after 12 years, she left him for a man who did none of those things. A man who was less available, less accommodating, less everything Marcus tried so hard to be. When Marcus came to me, broken and confused, he asked the question every divorced man asks. What did I do wrong? I gave her everything. And that's when I had to tell him the first brutal truth. The first truth. Your sacrifice doesn't create attraction. Most men are raised with a fairy tale. Work hard, treat her well, sacrifice your needs, and she'll love you forever. But here's what no one tells you. Sacrifice doesn't create attraction. It creates comfort. And comfort, while nice, doesn't make a woman's heart race. It doesn't make her desire you. It doesn't make her feel that electric pull that keeps relationships alive. Women don't fall in love with men who sacrifice. They fall in love with men who inspire. There's a massive difference. When you sacrifice everything, when you make yourself smaller to make her life bigger, you're not becoming more attractive. You're becoming invisible. You're becoming the foundation she walks on without noticing until it cracks. I've watched this pattern destroy countless marriages. The husband pours everything into his wife. He cancels plans with friends because she needs him. He gives up hobbies because family time matters more. He works longer hours to afford the lifestyle she wants. He thinks he's building love, but he's actually building resentment on both sides. He resents that his effort isn't appreciated. She resents that he's lost the edge that attracted her in the first place. Here's the psychology behind this. Women are attracted to men with purpose, with boundaries, with a life that exists independently of her approval. When you sacrifice all of that to please her, you're not showing love. You're showing that your sense of self depends on her validation, and that's suffocating. That's unattractive. That's the opposite of the masculine energy that creates desire. Think about the beginning of your relationship. You had your own life, your own goals, your own standards. You didn't drop everything the moment she called. You didn't rearrange your entire existence around her schedule. And she was drawn to that. She was drawn to a man who had something going on, a man who had value that existed outside of her opinion. But then what happened? Society told you that love means sacrifice. So you started saying yes to everything. You started making her comfort your primary mission. You stopped challenging her. You stopped maintaining your own frame. And slowly, without either of you fully realizing it, the attraction began to fade. The men who keep their marriages alive understand this. They love their wives deeply, but they never abandon themselves in the process. They maintain their fitness. They keep their friendships. They pursue their goals. They have boundaries. And ironically, that's what keeps their wives attracted. Because a woman doesn't want a servant, she wants a partner. She wants a man who's so grounded in his own purpose that her approval is welcome but not necessary. When Marcus finally understood this, everything shifted. He stopped trying to prove his worth through sacrifice. He started rebuilding his own life, his own goals, his own standards. And you know what happened? His ex-wife noticed. Not because he was trying to get her attention, but because he finally became the man she married. The one who had his own gravity, his own presence, his own power. Sacrifice has its place, but it should never come at the cost of your identity. The moment you lose yourself trying to keep someone else, you've already lost them. Because the version of you that they fell in love with no longer exists. The second truth. Emotional availability doesn't mean emotional weakness. Here's where most men get confused. Women say they want emotional availability. They want you to open up, to share your feelings, to be vulnerable. And men, trying to be good partners, do exactly that. They pour out every insecurity, every fear, every moment of doubt. And then they watch, confused, as the woman who asked for vulnerability starts pulling away. Let me be clear. Emotional availability is important, but there's a difference between being emotionally available and being emotionally dependent. There's a difference between sharing your feelings and dumping your insecurities on her like she's your therapist. Women want to see your humanity, but they don't want to carry the weight of your emotional instability. I've seen this destroy marriages time and time again. The husband, trying to be the modern, emotionally open man society tells him to be, starts treating his wife like his emotional support system. Every bad day at work becomes an hour-long venting session. Every moment of self-doubt becomes her problem to solve. Every fear becomes something she needs to comfort. And slowly, the dynamic shifts. She stops seeing him as her rock and starts seeing him as another person she needs to manage. Here's the brutal truth. Women are attracted to emotional strength, not emotional neediness. They want a man who can acknowledge his feelings without being controlled by them. They want a man who can be vulnerable without being weak. They want a man who can share his struggles without expecting her to fix them. Think about it this way. When you met her, you had your emotional foundation intact. You dealt with your problems. You processed your feelings. You had friends, hobbies, outlets. You were emotionally available, but you weren't emotionally dependent. That balance, that strength wrapped in humanity, that's what attracted her. But over time, many men make a fatal mistake. They start using their wife as their only emotional outlet. They stop maintaining the other relationships and activities that kept them balanced. They start leaning on her for validation, for comfort, for their sense of worth. And what happens? The attraction dies. Because she didn't sign up to be your mother or your therapist. She signed up to be your partner. The men whose marriages survive understand this distinction. They share their feelings, but they don't make their feelings her responsibility. They're vulnerable, but they maintain their emotional center. They open up, but they don't fall apart. They show humanity without showing weakness. And that balance, that's what keeps attraction alive. I remember talking to a man named David after his divorce. He told me, I did everything right. I opened up like she asked. I shared my fears. I was vulnerable. And when I asked him what that looked like, he described pouring out every insecurity, every bad feeling, every moment of doubt to his wife every single day. He thought he was being emotionally available. But what he was actually doing was making her responsible for his emotional stability. And that's exhausting. That's unattractive. That's a burden no one should have to carry. Real emotional availability looks different. It's being able to share when it matters without making every moment about your feelings. It's being vulnerable in ways that create connection, not dependency. It's showing your humanity without losing your strength. It's the difference between saying, I'm struggling with this and I wanted to share it with you, versus, I'm falling apart and I need you to fix me. Women want to be with a man who has emotional depth, but they also want to be with a man who has emotional resilience. They want someone who can feel deeply without being destroyed by those feelings. They want someone who can be real without being needy. That's the balance. That's what keeps marriages alive. The third truth. Her words and her actions often tell different stories. This is perhaps the most confusing truth for men. Women will tell you one thing with their words and show you something completely different with their actions. And most men, trying to be respectful, trying to be good partners, Listen to the words and ignore the actions. That's a fatal mistake. Let me give you an example. A woman says, "I want you to spend more time with me." So the husband, being a good listener, cancels his plans, stops seeing his friends, and dedicates every free moment to her. And then, she starts pulling away. She becomes distant. She seems less interested. He's confused because he's doing exactly what she asked for. But here's what he missed. What she was actually saying was, "I want to feel like a priority," not, "I want you to have no life outside of me." Women communicate in layers. Their words are often a starting point, not the full message. When a woman says she wants more time, she might actually want more quality in the time you already have. When she says she wants you to open up, she might actually want to see strength wrapped in vulnerability, not neediness. When she says she wants help around the house, she might actually want to see you take initiative without being asked. The men who stay married learn to read between the lines. They understand that women often communicate through hints, through tests, through indirect statements. Not because women are manipulative, but because that's how female communication works. It's relational. It's contextual. It's layered with subtext that requires emotional intelligence to decode. I've seen marriages fall apart because the husband took everything literally. His wife said she wanted to talk more, so he talked at her for hours. She said she wanted romance, so he bought flowers every week like clockwork. She said she wanted him to be more involved with the kids, so he started micromanaging every decision. In every case, he heard the surface request but missed the deeper need. Here's the pattern divorced men learn too late. When a woman's words and actions don't match, pay attention to the actions. If she says everything is fine but pulls away from your touch, everything is not fine. If she says she wants you to be more romantic but doesn't respond when you try, romance isn't actually the issue. If she says she wants more communication but shuts down every conversation, the real problem is something deeper. The biggest trap men fall into is trying to solve the stated problem without understanding the real one. A woman says she's unhappy because you don't help enough around the house, so you start doing more chores. But nothing changes. Why? Because the chores weren't the real issue. The real issue was that she felt unseen, unappreciated, or disconnected. The dishes were just the symbol. This is where emotional intelligence becomes critical. You have to learn to listen not just to what's being said, but to what's being communicated through tone, through body language, through patterns of behavior. You have to understand that when she's upset about something small, it's often really about something big. You have to develop the ability to see past the surface and understand the emotional undercurrent. I remember talking to a divorced man named Eric. He told me his ex-wife would say she wanted him to be more ambitious, more driven. So he worked harder, longer hours, chased promotions. And she left him for being absent. He was furious. She told me to be more ambitious. But what she actually meant was that she wanted to see passion in his eyes, purpose in his life, not just more hours at a job he hated. She wanted to see him driven by something that lit him up, not exhausted by something that drained him. The lesson here is simple but difficult. Don't just listen to her words. Watch her reactions. Notice her patterns. Pay attention to what she responds to, not just what she says she wants. Because women often don't fully know what they want until they see it. They communicate in feelings, in energy, in responses. And if you're only listening to the literal words, you're missing the real conversation. The fourth truth: comfort kills desire. Every man in a long-term relationship faces this paradox. You work hard to create stability, security, and comfort for your family. You build a life that's predictable and safe. You eliminate uncertainty. You become reliable, steady, dependable. And then one day you realize the passion is gone. The desire has faded. The woman who once couldn't keep her hands off you now seems more interested in her phone than in you. What happened? You created too much comfort. And comfort, while necessary for building a life together, is the enemy of desire. Desire needs tension. It needs uncertainty. It needs the feeling that something could be gained or lost. When everything becomes predictable, when every day looks the same, when there's no edge, no challenge, no spark, desire dies. This is one of the hardest truths for good men to accept. You think you're doing the right thing by being consistent, predictable, and stable, and in many ways you are. Those qualities build trust, they create security, they make someone feel safe, but they don't make someone feel desire. And a marriage without desire eventually becomes a business partnership or a roommate situation. Comfortable, but dead. I've watched this pattern play out hundreds of times. The early relationship is full of excitement, unpredictability, passion. Then you get married. You settle into routines. You know each other's schedules down to the minute. You stop surprising each other. You stop creating moments of tension. Every conversation is predictable. Every weekend follows the same pattern. And slowly, the fire goes out. The men who stay happily married understand something crucial. You have to actively maintain desire. You can't just assume it will survive on its own. You have to create moments of unpredictability. You have to maintain some edge. You have to keep her slightly uncertain about you, in healthy ways. Not through games or manipulation, but through genuine growth, genuine mystery, genuine independence. Think about what created attraction in the beginning. She didn't know everything about you. There was mystery, there was discovery. Every interaction revealed something new. You had your own life, your own goals, your own world that existed outside of her. That created natural tension. She wondered what you were thinking. She wondered if you'd call. She wondered if she measured up to your standards. That uncertainty, that tension, that's what fueled desire. But over years of marriage, most men eliminate all of that. They become completely transparent. They have no life outside the relationship. They stop growing, stop challenging themselves, stop creating new experiences. They think that's what commitment looks like. But what it actually looks like is stagnation. And stagnation kills desire. Let me be clear. I'm not saying you should play games or create artificial drama. I'm saying you should remain a man of depth, mystery, and growth. You should maintain friendships. You should pursue goals. You should have parts of your life that are yours. You should continue evolving. You should occasionally surprise her, not with grand gestures, but with small moments that remind her she doesn't have you completely figured out. One divorced man told me his biggest regret was becoming too comfortable. He stopped working out because he already had her. He stopped pursuing hobbies because he had a family. He stopped challenging himself because life was stable. And slowly, he watched her attraction fade. She never said it directly, but he could feel it. The way she looked at him changed. The passion disappeared. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The brutal truth is this: the moment you stop being attractive, you start being taken for granted. And being attractive isn't about looks, it's about energy. It's about maintaining an edge. It's about being someone who's still growing, still challenging themselves, still unpredictable in small ways. It's about being comfortable in your life together without becoming comfortable in yourself. Women need security, but they also need desire. And if you give them all security and no desire, they'll eventually seek that feeling elsewhere, or they'll simply detach. The balance is everything. You build the stable foundation, but you also maintain the spark. You create the comfortable home, but you also maintain your edge. You become reliable, but you also remain interesting. The fifth truth: you cannot love someone into loving you back. This is the truth that breaks men's hearts. And it's the one that divorced men wish they'd understood years earlier. You can be the best husband in the world, and it still might not be enough. You can do everything right, sacrifice everything, give your whole heart, and she might still leave. Because you cannot force someone to feel what they don't feel. You cannot love someone into loving you back. Most men operate under the belief that if they just do enough, if they just love hard enough, if they just prove themselves enough, eventually their wife will respond with the same love. So they try harder, they sacrifice more, they give more attention, more effort, more of themselves. And when it doesn't work, they're devastated. Because they did everything they were supposed to do. But here's the painful reality. Love is not a transaction. It's not earned through effort. It's not something you can negotiate or prove your way into. Either someone feels it, or they don't. Either the connection exists, or it doesn't. And no amount of trying harder will create feelings that aren't there. I've watched men destroy themselves trying to save marriages that were already over. They read every relationship book, they went to every therapy session, they changed everything about themselves, they bent over backwards. And in the end, it didn't matter. Because the fundamental problem wasn't something they did wrong. The problem was that their wife simply didn't feel it anymore. This is a brutal pill to swallow. It means that sometimes, no matter how good you are, no matter how hard you try, it still won't be enough. It means that you can be faithful, kind, present, hardworking, and emotionally available, and she might still choose someone else. It means that your best might not be what she wants, and that's a reality that shatters men. But here's what divorced men eventually learn. Once they stop trying to convince someone to love them and start focusing on being someone worth loving, everything changes. Not necessarily with that person, but with themselves. They stop begging for scraps of affection. They stop accepting disrespect in the name of trying harder. They stop shrinking themselves to fit into someone else's life. And in that process, they often discover something powerful. Their worth was never dependent on someone else's ability to see it. The men who survive divorce with their dignity intact are the ones who finally understand this. They realize that you cannot negotiate desire. You cannot convince someone to respect you. You cannot make someone choose you through effort alone. Either they see your value or they don't. Either they want to be with you or they don't. And once you accept that truth, you stop wasting energy on people who don't value what you bring. There's a specific moment in every dying marriage where this becomes clear. The husband has tried everything. He's changed his behavior, done the therapy, made the compromises, given the space, done the work. And nothing has changed. That's the moment he realizes, this isn't about what I'm doing. This is about what she's feeling. And I can't control that. That realization is both devastating and freeing. It's devastating because it means you're powerless to save something you desperately want to save. But it's freeing because it means you can stop blaming yourself for something that was never fully in your control. You can stop twisting yourself into knots trying to become whatever you think will make her stay. You can stop sacrificing your self-respect for the hope that maybe this time it'll be different. One man told me after his divorce, "The day I realized I couldn't make her love me was the day I finally started healing." Because he stopped fighting a battle he couldn't win. He stopped trying to prove his worth to someone who had already decided he wasn't enough. He stopped giving his power away to someone who didn't value it. And in that acceptance, he found peace. Here's what this means, practically. You should absolutely work on your marriage. You should communicate, compromise, grow, and fight for what matters. But there's a line, and that line is your self-respect. The moment you find yourself begging, pleading, or shrinking yourself just to be tolerated, you've crossed it. The moment you're doing all the work while she does none, you've crossed it. The moment you're accepting disrespect in the name of saving the relationship, you've crossed it. A healthy relationship requires two people trying. It requires mutual effort, mutual respect, mutual investment. And if you're the only one fighting to keep it alive, then it's already dead. You're just delaying the funeral. The harsh truth divorced men learn is that you cannot save a marriage alone. You cannot want it badly enough for both people. You cannot love hard enough to compensate for someone who's checked out. So what do you do with this truth? You honor it. You love fully, but you maintain your self-respect. You give effort, but you don't give away your dignity. You fight for what matters, but you don't fight to convince someone of your worth. You remain the prize while being a great partner. And if someone can't see that, if someone doesn't value that, then the painful but necessary truth is this: they're not your person. And no amount of trying will change that. The freedom comes when you realize that your worth isn't determined by one person's inability to see it. Your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to appreciate it. Your love isn't wasted because it wasn't returned. Every ounce of effort you put into trying to be a better man, a better partner, a better human, that wasn't for nothing. It shaped you. It revealed your character. And it prepared you for something better. These 5 truths are hard to hear. They go against everything you've been told about how relationships work. But they're real. They're what divorced men wish they'd known before it was too late. They're what could save your marriage if you apply them now, or save you years of pain if you're honest about where things stand. If this video opened your eyes, if something here resonated deep in your chest, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that like button. Let me know this message reached you. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications because I'm going to keep breaking down the real psychology of relationships that no one else is willing to talk about honestly. And third, drop a comment. Tell me which of these 5 truths hit you the hardest. Tell me your story. Tell me what you're realizing right now. Because every comment helps this message reach more men who need to hear it. The difference between men who lose themselves in relationships and men who maintain their power while loving fully comes down to understanding these truths. Not to become cold or manipulative, but to become balanced. To become the kind of man who can love deeply without losing himself. To become the kind of man who can commit fully while maintaining his edge. To become the kind of man who knows his worth isn't up for negotiation. You deserve a relationship built on mutual respect, mutual desire, and mutual effort. You deserve a partner who values your sacrifice without expecting you to disappear in the process. You deserve someone who loves the man you actually are, not the man you pretend to be. And if you're not getting that, these 5 truths are your wake-up call. Not to give up on love, but to start protecting yourself while you love. Because you can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't love someone into loving you back. Remember that. Protect it. Live by it. Because your life, your peace, and your future depend on it.